All right, we're looking at figure P1-8 as our next part. And I like this one because it has symmetry about this, across the horizontal. So I'm thinking about, I'll put the origin over here because, um, we can put that origin wherever we need it. It just some geometry needs to be related to it. So if we were to draw half of this, then I can use the mirror. And then we'll also just very quickly introduce the patterns. So I will pick a first hole location, and we'll do this as a pattern, and we'll show what happens when one of the elements needs to be left out of the pattern. All right, so I have my previous part up. I'll go ahead and close that, and we need to double check. I looked at these numbers, notice 70, 20, not a lot of decimals, and at the bottom of our view it says that we're in millimeters. So if I catch that, then I will go into part metric. At some point you are going to open up a part inch, and as soon as you notice it, hopefully sooner than later, you'll want to switch over to millimeters, grams, and seconds. All right, so that takes care of it. One of the things that I will say as far as the first assignments, if you did happen to draw this in inches and it turned out really huge, if we were putting this in the assembly, we'd know right away because usually our assembly would be either really small, really big, and the part would be the reverse. You would have a pretty good sense that something happened. All right, so let's go into the sketch, and this time I will do sketch. And we're going to stay with these two techniques of opening up our sketch. So as soon as you hit the sketch and those planes appear, pick the sketch plane that you want, the front plane. I'm still partial to just coming over to the front plane and saying that's where I want to go. Whenever we have symmetry, I'm going to suggest the center line. Center line and construction line are the same term. They're mutually exclusive. And if I do horizontal and infinite length, I don't have to worry about drawing it. I just place it. So if I come back out and do a select, then that gives me a center line that I will not run out of geometry with. So kind of like the last part, this time I'm going to do a click drag. But like the last part, we're just going to sketch the outside. And I'm only going to worry about half of it. So when I get back to the center line, then we can go with that geometry. So normally I'd go ahead and add some dimensions. I think all of our relations are going to be working well. So I'm not too concerned with those. And if I go left to right, I'm going to get all of my geometry. If I go right to left, I'm going to get all of my object geometry, should have said, and the center line as well. So when I come up and tell it to do a mirror, I'm going to get that mirror instantaneously. Control Z will undo it. And let's see what happens when I pick my objects and go into mirror. It's going to ask me the mirror about, and then I can pick the center line. And I think it will still allow for another object in that case, but the center line kind of cements it into the mix. All right, so we have an overall of 120, and that will get our scale kind of set. And I like to have the big number to work with. And then we went 70 and 100, so 100, 70, and my primary units, because I opened this in inch, were set to 3 decimal places, so I could go change that, but not really that worried about it. So we go to 40, and notice that as I'm adding these dimensions, they're moving, and because of that symmetry, I'm getting that geometry set up and adjusted the way that I would expect it to. So it looks like the last one is going to be to the center line. Let's fly this back in here. So if my center line's through here, and the 40 comes up to that point and is also the center of the circles, then we're going to have to, if we use the center line and go to a point, I'm going to be able to get a whole dimension or a half dimension, right? So if you see those items pop up on you, as opposed to, oops, don't need both of those, so escape, escape. If I pick just the object, it's going to come out and go, I would go 80, right? I would double the 40s. But because of the way this is dimensioned, the natural, slipped into that one, my natural tendency would be to follow the dimensions and just keep in mind that if you place that dimension immediately in between the object and the center line, then you're not going to see anything different. If you go to the other side of the center line, it's basically doing a radial or a diametral, a half dimension, or a full dimension because of the center line. So one of the things that can happen that might throw you off a bit. All right, so we're going to draw the circle. And let's go ahead and make that a reasonable size. We have a dimension of 20. And then the choice is, since these were tied to the other objects, let's go with one of those relations where I can pick the line and the point, and then it will be coincident. And coincident just means that it will lie across that line and be able to move up and down. And if I go from point to center point, then I'll be looking at horizontal. So I mentioned there was 3 ways to kind of deal with these objects depending on the geometry. As you're building into this, try these different combinations, and just be aware that there's multiple solutions depending on what you select. All right, so I'm going to do a linear sketch pattern, and my distance in X is 40 millimeters, and the X spacing, I want to dimension. There's going to be 2. And then the y-axis is grayed out until I give it a number greater than 1. So 2, 3, as many as you need. And then that one is going to also be a 40. All right, but it's going the wrong way, so we need to reverse the direction. So once I reverse that direction, then I'm going to dimension the y spacing. All right, so this gives me the best combination that this will be almost fully defined. Not entirely, and my dimensions are getting a little cluttered there. All right, so let's see what can move here. So, and did not like that. I was a little close. It tried to infer. All right, so here's what's happening is the center line that the sketch pattern used to set the y spacing did not go vertical. All right, so it did not like that one. Either that or it jumped. When I put it back, oh, it went to midpoint. So Control Z, and it is at the midpoint. So let's kind of move those around and see. And it still doesn't like that one. All right, so I'm going to back that up one more. See if I can grab the center line, and it's still not liking it vertical. So something's going on with that coincident, but I think that coincident, oh, okay, so the endpoint went coincident to something. No, I'm still over defined over here. So cool, good example of a bad example, or a bad example of a good example. All right, so let's go ahead and take that one out. All right, so that moves and that moves. So somewhere I had a combination. Hopefully it doesn't do that to you. That it has a combination of dimensions. So because it put in that center line, I suspect that I should not have added the first coincidence. So if you're following along with this or watching through and then going to try it, when you get to that point with the coincident, let's bypass that coincident and let the center line bring it into its location. All right, so now I have to make a decision, and we could have told it to ignore this instance, but I prefer to make it construction geometry. And what that does, if it comes back to later on, I need to make an adjustment, I can always switch that from construction um, back over to an object line, and then it will be still available to work with. All right, so 12 millimeters, we'll go ahead and save this. And I want to say that you're going to run into um, those conflicts with the relations and the dimensions, and that is probably a good case that right now in chapter 1, we're just going to get into the sketching and probably put this geometry all in the same sketch. But that's a good and justifies making it a separate sketch and then doing a cut extrude through the part rather than trying to do everything in one.